Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joyfinn. I would like to welcome you to the launch of the Gulf Good Vibes podcast and also the launch of our wellness program called Triple, which stands for Laugh, Lunch, and Learn. With me is our Principal Secretary, Diaspora Affairs, Ms. Roseline Njogu, and a panel of experts and community volunteers, Ms. Wanyeki, Ms. Trish, Bedford, Ponam, Shahadeo, and Ms. Lucy. So as we start this program, I would just like to give a brief explanation. Triple, especially for diaspora community, this is where we come together to have a short conversation, to have a short meal, and have a good laugh, and we can just discuss the things that are of concern to us. The diaspora community would suffer from isolation, would suffer from a separation from family. So where you're in a community that you can sit together, you can have a chat, you can have a conversation, it gets you connected. And this is a program that would be of benefit to support the wellness of the mental wellness of the community especially. So first, I would like to acknowledge the Principal Secretary. And as a brief, she will just give us her profile and just let us know a little bit about her.
Thanks. As you said, Roseline Njogu, I'm the PS in charge of Diaspora Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Republic of Kenya. I'm excited to be here. And the work that we really do is to protect, to engage, to empower, and to prosper the diaspora. As you might know, we have about 4 million Kenyans who live in the diaspora. 70,000 of those live here in Qatar. And our work really is to figure out how, as a government, we can engage the diaspora in a strategic way, how we can support their ventures, how we can protect their rights, their interests, their welfare, and so on. So for the last 2 years and 5 months when this department has been in place, this is the work that we've been doing. So I'm excited to be here, to be having this conversation with you around mental health, because mental health in the diaspora is of great concern, not just to us as a government of Kenya, but to various governments that have large diaspora communities as we do. And it is a conversation that we are having at various capitals around this particular issue.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that brief introduction, but very empowering. We would just like to know, as the Kenyan government or as part of the government, what are some of the collaborative initiatives that you have between the ministry or the government with the community that are of boosting mental wellness?
Oh, right. So we do a lot of work as far as mental health of the diaspora is concerned. As I said, our most important mandate is to champion the rights and welfare of the Kenyan diaspora. Mental wellness is at the core of that. So a number of things have been done, of course. We do have, and we created this about a year ago now, the Kenya Diaspora Mental Health Action Plan. And what that does is it outlines our intention and our approach to dealing with mental health issues within our diaspora. And you will find that the contours of mental wellness or illness or ill health across the various diasporas will be different. So the challenges Kenyans are facing in Qatar will be different from the challenges, and I mean from a mental health perspective, that Kenyans are facing in India, Kenyans are facing in the US. So there are variations to the kinds of issues that we're dealing with across the board. There are variations in terms of the issues that we are dealing with, whether you are a recent immigrant or whether you are second generation, third generation. So the issues tend to be different. If you're second generation, for example, the issues tend to be more around identity. Who am I now in this new country? Am I Kenyan? Am I Australian? I look and I have the last name of my parents, but my accent is nothing like my parents' accent. So there are various issues, and we have identity concerns there. Among sort of new diaspora people who've recently moved, you'll have issues around homesickness and just that detachment from home, and knowing that even when you go home, you're not really home. You're a child of two worlds. You have obligations in both parts of the world. You're trying to build a new home in your adoptive country, but you have connections back home and people that you love and who depend on you, and friendships are fracturing. So there's a lot of stress on that. If you move when you're younger, how does that affect you versus if you move when you're 40 years old as opposed to an 18-year-old student? If you move during the years when you're still forming your personal sort of circle of friends, if you move as a student to China and you go there and then you form your community as an undergraduate, how is that different from somebody who moves as an engineer to Qatar, for example? So it has different shades, and the action plan tries to sort of address as much as a government can from that point of view. Because remember, we are in Nairobi, right? So we sit in the capital. We do have our embassies in all of these places, but what we can do for the diaspora is limited, which is why programs like what you're doing are so important, because you are the hands, the feet, you are on the ground and working with the community. So government's role then becomes supporting that community. But the other things that government sort of does, and that Kenya has done to support its diaspora, is to make sure that we reduce the levels of distress in some of these places, which means we extend services to our diaspora, even in places that are far-flung. People get very stressed if they can't get a renewed passport. People can get very stressed if somebody dies abroad and nobody knows what is the process of maybe repatriating their loved one's body and that kind of thing. So doing the things that government is supposed to do so that people can function. So we make sure, using our mobile consular services program, for example, that we're able to reach Kenyans, even in places where we don't have embassies. So in the last 2 years, we've done mobile consular services in over 150 cities around the world. So we take these services to Kenyans in places where Kenya doesn't have an embassy, for example. So last year, we served Kenyans in Jamaica. We served Kenyans in Yemen. We served Kenyans in places where we don't have an embassy. So we will take the services there, or in places where we have embassies, but they are very large swaths of land, Australia, for example. So we sit in Canberra, but we have Kenyans in Perth, in Melbourne, in Sydney, and all of these places. So we take the services to them, and they're able to renew their passports, they're able to get their children's birth certificates, get their police clearances, and that kind of thing. And not having to travel that much immediately makes life easier for people. So we offer services through a digital system. Thirdly, one of the first things that I did when I started this department was to bring on board a counselor to the department. Not only did we know that the diaspora were going to need these services, but our own officers needed support, because if you work in Diaspora Affairs, some of the things, you deal with people on a daily basis. So some of the things that we deal with and my officers have to deal with is, labor distress issues. So they get calls about labor distress. They get a lot of calls about, somebody has died abroad. Maybe they're on treatment or whatever, but the family needs support to bring back the body, or to evacuate. When we do medical evacuations, for example, when we have to do evacuations from war and conflict. So our own officers live with I found people are living with a lot of trauma, a lot of stress. So we brought on board a counselor so that frontline officers can get support and then are able to support the diaspora. So we have counseling services that are available for diaspora. Any diasporian can actually go online on our eCitizen platform and actually book counseling. And we do offer counseling services to our diaspora and to their families who are back home, who come very often to our offices. So counseling is one of the big ones, but also just demystifying. Having an opportunity to sit in places like this and talk about the fact that government is doing something about mental wellness, and people should have no shame about it. Take away that stigma that comes with talking about mental health. So interventions like this, interventions around evacuating people when they're in distress, some of the things that we do. We know that if a member of a diaspora community becomes very unwell, the diaspora community will usually come around that person. And not just with they will also support in terms of money and all of these other things. It helps when we are able to take away that burden from the diaspora community. We still expect the diaspora community to come around you because this is your community, but we do the heavy lifting. When we do things like evacuations from war, for example, in the last 2 years we've done, I think, 3 or 4 evacuations of our nationals living abroad in Lebanon, in Sudan, in Israel, Gaza, and DRC recently. One of the things we do once people land is actually do a debrief session, because people have seen, very traumatic things. And so we debrief them and we do some counseling. We do the same thing when we bring in victims and survivors of human trafficking and so on. So a lot of the work that we do within the State Department is a lot about actually supporting the diasporian and their family, very often as far as mental health is concerned. There's also other things that we do in terms of diaspora investment and talent and so on. But the welfare mandate is probably our key.
Wow.
Yeah.
You really applaud the government for the initiatives that some of them I didn't even realize that we're running such kinds of program. But when we travel abroad, we are diaspora abroad, but we leave our families back home. Do you have any initiatives that will take care of families back at home when this crisis happens? Because from outside we can go to the embassy. How about the families that we leave back at home? Is there any kind of connection that the government or the ministry offers to these people?
So let me answer that question in two ways. One, our mandate as a State Department is really outward looking. It is really to support our diaspora and to a certain extent to support their families. So for example, if you're in distress today, if you're unwell or you're hospitalized, God forbid, you're hospitalized here in Doha, before we even hear about it from the embassy, your family will have been in my office to say that your family or your member of parliament or your somebody will have come and said, so and so, our daughter is, because we are a very communal society, our daughter is sick in such and such a place. It's constantly on my, even now, partly why I was glad that I don't have my phone here is because, concerns are coming through every minute. So, and there is, now we end up having a dual client because we have to help you. We have to send a team to come and check on you in the hospital, and, we do what we can for you. And our embassy teams are very good at that. They will send consular officers and they come and do hospital visits. But we have to counsel your family, because very often people arrive in a sense of real high stress and distress. It's already very stressful that their daughter is terribly sick and hospitalized so far from them. They don't know what to do. In many places they don't have access to you. They don't know how the thing works. So part of our job is just our full-time counselors just to sit with these families and just bring them, get them to calm down. But now for the broader public, Kenya does have a mental health policy and a mental health action plan. And that is being implemented in various ways, whether through the public service, for example, and the different publics that are covered within our mental health action plan, the various institutions, and so on. I will say that the right to mental health is one of the rights that's enshrined within the Constitution of Kenya. And it has taken some work for us to get to the point where we are taking this seriously and we are bringing people on board and creating the infrastructure for it. We don't have the right levels, for example, of psychiatrists and mental health workers and so on and so forth. And there's need for us to train more, but also to think about alternative methods of dealing with some of these things. You find that many people are more open to dealing with mental health concerns in non-clinical settings, right? So the minute this thing becomes a medical conversation, many people run away from it because are you calling me insane? Right? So immediately, but if it's a conversation which we can have shoulder to shoulder as we walk, as we talk about something, then it becomes much easier for people. And so I think for our government and for governments around the world, we need to think about more natural, culturally sensitive sort of ways of dealing with these things that take the burden off the healthcare system, for example, and that just allow us to have these conversations with our relatives, and we need tools for us to figure out how do we do these things, so that then you let the medical professionals handle the things that require to be handled by medical professionals, including mental health issues. But there is a lot more that other groups and other parts of the society can handle.
Oh. That is just a very lovely introduction to the program that we are having here. But before we can go to the Triple L model, do you have any final words or any word of advice to the diaspora community, both Kenyan and around the world?
So yes, thank you for that. I want to say a couple of things. Firstly, to say this morning I posted a picture on my social media where I had met some Kenyan diasporians here in Doha, talking about how proud I am of the fantastic talent that we find out here. So to say that this is something that I truly feel. Every time I am away from home and I meet Kenyans, I beam with pride. I'm very excited, and just to say, using your platform, kudos to the fantastic talent that's out there doing things, but also for you here and the Gulf Good Vibes team that's taking leadership from the global south on issues that are so important, and you're using sort of culturally sensitive, but what's the word I'm looking for? Our ways of knowing, our ways of being, and using those to take on global problems. And you're leading from the front. I'm so proud to be associated. I love that you're using things like music. This is a very African thing, for example, to use music to discuss difficult things, to talk about difficult things. There is a Kenyan fabric, a leso. Which is a wrap that you wear around your body. Everybody's nodding. Okay, so a leso is a wrap that you wear around your body. And one of the things that's fascinating about lesos, especially for Kenyans at the coast and Tanzanians as well at the coast, is that they always have a message, usually a methali, a proverb at the bottom, and you use these lesos to communicate with somebody else. It's a coded message, and they allow for a platform for people to have a conversation about something uncomfortable. So music in this case allows us to have a conversation about something that's uncomfortable or might be, taboo. And so we're using parables, we're using stories, and so on. I'm glad to see that you guys have carried that those knowledges and those ways of knowing and of working to this space, and you're doing that. To say finally that as government does things, including creating this mental health action plan that I've talked about, and the diaspora policy that was recently launched and so on, at the multilateral level with other governments, even within the UN framework and so on, we are talking about mental health of the diaspora. And Kenya has been leading the conversation, both within the AU and the UN, conversations around the mental health of the diaspora and how the world needs to come around that conversation and take how governments need to take this issue particularly seriously. So plug this initiative into some of those ongoing initiatives and see how much more we can have a multiplier effect. But also to say, I am really looking forward to seeing how initiatives like Triple L, the buddy program that you have here, this podcast, and whatever else you build, how we are able to transfer those to other parts of the world, to other diasporas around the world, and see how that, I think your song says to spread good vibes.
Yes.
So I would love to see how you spread the Gulf Good Vibes. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much, Madam PS. Thank you for the lovely words of encouragement. Thank you for even the boost of confidence that you have definitely given us, and all the initiatives that the government is carrying on. We do really appreciate, because being away from home, to know that we have that safety and have that security within our government and within reach, it is such a comfort to most people. And to know that we can get help, we can get support. We don't have to languish by ourselves in our homes or just deal with it personally. It is such a comfort to us, and we really appreciate that.
I forgot to say that we have a 24-hour call center where diasporians can anytime reach us and actually have these conversations. So please make use of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.